In the beginning, there was only the sound of screaming metal, a scream that tore through the void between galaxies, echoing across the Astronomicon like a wound in reality itself. It began as a vibration, a static tremor in the Vox networks of distant outposts, then a shriek that melted data slates and made servitors convulse in unison. Tech priests of Mars spoke of a corrupted signal, a blasphemous frequency that shredded both machine and mind. But those who listened to Long claimed to hear something else within it, the sound of chains ripping through. Flesh dot, then the sky split. A crimson storm bled through the fabric of the Imperium, and from its heart emerged something no imperial scripture had ever named. A figure dripping in blood and madness, his chainsaw roar drowning out the hymnals of the ecclesiarchy. He did not come for conquest or faith. He came for the thrill of destruction itself. They called him a demon, a heretic weapon, perhaps even a punishment from the Emperor. But to the few who survived his arrival, he was something worse. He was hunger given form. Planets burned before his laughter. Orc WAAAG etches fell silent. Astartes found their power armor split like fruit under his blade. The Adeptus Custodes called him an abomination that even the Golden Throne could not contain. Across the galaxy, the name spread through fear and whispers. Chainsaw Man. The Imperium has faced gods, demons, and horrors beyond time, but never a monster who found joy in every scream he caused. This is not a tale of victory or vengeance. This is the story of what happens when pure chaos meets the grim dark order of the 41st millennium. The planet's name had been lost to time, a dot of rust orbiting a dying sun. Once, it produced bolter shells for the Astra Militarum, its foundries roaring day and night in praise of the Omniscient. Now, the manufactorums burned dimly, their smoke rising in slow, choking spirals. The air was a cocktail of ash and machine oil, the kind that clung to the lungs and corroded memory itself. Beneath the rhythmic pounding of forges and the distant chanting of the Mechanicus, something new began to stir, a sound that did not belong to this world. It started as a vibration beneath the grating floors, subtle enough to be mistaken for a cogitator malfunction. But the sound grew, a rising, snarling hum that crawled up the spine of every worker who heard it. Magozanganseers stopped mid-chant, their mechadendrites twitching in unease. Even the servitors' lobotomized husks of humanity froze in synchronized terror, their augmetic limbs seizing as sparks burst from their sockets. The vibration deepened until the air itself seemed to split. Then came the scream. Not of pain, but of motion, a chainsaw's roar, distorted by distance, yet sharper than any siren. A low thrumming pulse that made every lumen flicker and die. The Vox lines exploded with static. The data feeds screamed warnings in binary cart. Corruption, signal and registered machine. Soul detected. In the central manufactorum, a priest of Mars fell to his knees before a trembling altar. The sacred cogwheel above him cracked, spilling molten bronze. His voice trembled as he whispered a prayer to the Omniscient, but his words dissolved into the metallic echo of the approaching roar. He turned his augmetic eyes toward the darkness and saw it. A figure stepped from the red haze, wreathed in heat and smoke. Flesh and steel merged in a body shaped like a man, but moving with the rhythm of something far older, far crueler. His head was crowned with a snarling saw blade that growled even at rest. His chest rose and fell in mechanical convulsions, leaking oil and blood in equal measure. When he smiled, it wasn't with lips, but with teeth carved from steel. The priest's mechadendrites recoiled in instinctive worship or terror. The figure tilted his head, as if listening to the world itself breathe, and then with one twitch of his arm, the chain roared to life. The sound was unbearable, a frequency that split reality, shattering glass, bone, and faith alike. Servitors exploded in showers of sparks. Machine spirits howled through the vox. The very ground split open as molten promethium gushed upward like blood from the veins of the planet. The priest tried to speak, to demand the intruder's designation in the name of the Omnisut, but his voice vanished beneath the rising chorus of chains. When the blade met his chest, it was almost tender, a single, fluid strike that cleaved flesh and augmetic alike. Sparks danced where blood should have been, and when his body fell, the echo of his prayer seemed to linger in the smoke. From orbit, the planetary sensors caught only static. Then silence. The manufactorum had gone dark. The cogitators marked the loss with a single entry. Machine soul consumed in the void above. Something stirred. The warp shimmered faintly at first, then violently, as if reality itself rejected the presence of what had emerged. The roar continued, rolling across the stars like the growl of a god that had finally woken. Across the void, a patrol frigate of the Imperial Navy drifted on its silent course through the dying light of the sector. Its hull bore the scars of countless campaigns, its vox arrays humming the low static hymn of duty. Within, men and women of the Astra Militarum spoke in whispers. The reports from the surface were fragmented Mushin code distortions, screaming binary. A single repeating phrase pulsing through every transmission: the roar comes. Lieutenant Varin stood before the hololithic display, his jaw clenched. The planet below shimmered with thermal spikes like a battlefield on fire. It's spreading, his adjutant murmured. Every manufacturing signal has gone dark. The lieutenant nodded, the flicker of the display painting his face in ghostly blue. Send a request to Mars. Tell them the machine spirit of this world has gone mad. But even as he spoke, the Vox officer tore off his headset with a cry, blood trickling from his ear. From the ship's speakers, the same sound bled through, the chainsaw's growl, distorted by the void, devouring the silence between stars. Without warning, the lights flickered. The ship's engines screamed. Every Uspex system flashed red, as though reality itself had been struck. Then, on the forward viewing deck, the void rippled. It was not warp energy, not a demon incursion as the crew had seen before. It was something raw, heavier, a hole in the universe itself. Through it came a figure, dragging the weight of blood and heat behind him. For a moment, Varin could not breathe. The figure floated outside the ship, but there was no void suit, no armor of the Adeptus Astartes, only flesh and chain. The thing's head tilted toward the ship as though studying prey through glass. Then the chain roared again, and the entire frigate trembled. Litanies of protection were shouted across the bridge, but the prayers came out broken, distorted. Like old records played backward, the viewing glass shattered outward, venting atmosphere into the stars. Crew members were flung into the void like grains of sand, their screams cut short by the vacuum. The creature stepped through the breach, its chainsaw still dripping with the blood of another world. Yet it did not suffocate, did not freeze. Instead, its every motion ignited tiny sparks in the air, as if friction alone bowed before it. Varin reached for his sidearm, though he knew it would mean nothing. In the name of the Emperor, he whispered, not as a challenge, but as a confession. The figure turned toward him, slow, deliberate. Its saw teeth gleamed under the emergency lights. and its eyes burned with something beyond hate, beyond hunger, pure, ecstatic destruction. The blast doors sealed too late. The creature was already inside, moving faster than logic should allow. A blur of motion, the sound of flesh tearing, metal shrieking, and the wet rhythm of blood against steel. Within seconds, the bridge was silent. The Auspex displayed one final reading: unidentified entity level, annihilation in the heart of the Mechanicus archives. Light years away, the same signal reached the data forges. Mago's biologist studied the recording, its distorted image flickering between human form and demon shape. He whispered in lingua technis, "What manner of machine is this?" But the data slate answered only with static, followed by a faint, impossible sound: laughter. Mechanical and human, echoing through the endless code. Outside the walls of Mars, the stars dimmed for just a moment, as if the universe itself held its breath. By the time the signal reached Terra, it was already fractured beyond translation. The astropaths bled from their eyes and mouths, their psychic conduits burning white-hot as the corrupted frequency tore through their souls. Choirs screamed in harmony with something that wasn't music. It was the sound of a chain spinning endlessly, cutting through flesh, steel, and sanity alike. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica sealed its halls in silence, and the Ordo Hereticus issued quarantine orders across the entire sector. But silence could not contain what had already escaped. In the shadows beneath the Imperial Palace, Inquisitor Marith Kale received the first decrypted fragment. It flickered on a cracked data slate, the image breaking apart every few seconds into static. He saw a planet aflame, manufacturums split open like wounds, and a figure standing at the center of the inferno. The thing's saw blades dripped red, its grin unbroken even as the ground melted around it. Kale muted the sound instinctively, yet the faint vibration lingered in the bones of the room. He turned to the custodian beside him, the golden sentinel unmoving, eyes like frozen suns. What could tear apart an entire world's spirit? Kale whispered. The custodian's voice was quiet, its resonance like thunder beneath stone. Perhaps not what, Inquisitor, but who? Outside, Terra's spires rose through smog and sanctified air. Pilgrims crawled on bloodied knees toward shrines older than memory. Yet above the hymns, a hum began to creep into the air, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Some claimed it was the sound of machinery deep within the palace. Others, the groan of the golden throne itself. The priests denied it, but the noise persisted. Deep within the vaults, servitors twitched in unison. Vox channels bled static, and fragments of a foreign chant slipped through. A name, half heard, half feared: Chainsaw. Kale ordered immediate containment. Dozens of regiments mobilized under the banner of the Aquila, descending upon the transmission Origin. What they found was not a battlefield. It was a graveyard of metal and bone. The ground steamed as if the planet itself had been fed through an engine. Lemon rust tanks lay dissected neatly in half. Power armor cracked open like eggshells. Every corpse bore the same mark, a jagged spiral of burn and bite that defied logic. Kale walked among the ruins, his boots sinking into ash and cooling blood. He felt something, a vibration beneath the surface, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. It was faint at first, then grew until it filled his chest like thunder. The vox crackled. Static twisted into laughter, and then he saw him, standing atop the broken husk of a baneblade. The chainsaw man raised his weapon high, the blade word dripping molten residue, and his eyes met Kale's across the field. There was no rage there, no purpose, only wild, manic joy, the kind that only destruction could feed. Kale's mind shattered against that gaze. His faith, once unbreakable, trembled for the first time. He fired his bolt pistol, more out of reflex than courage, but the bullets never reached their mark. The figure was already gone, replaced by a ripple of air and heat. Only his laughter remained, echoing across the ruins, a song of blood that no god dared answer. Far above, orbiting satellites caught the first warp fluctuation. The light of the Astronomicon dimmed for exactly 6 seconds. To most, it was nothing. To those who knew better, it was the sound of something ancient waking up. The Imperium would call it the beginning of a new heresy. But the truth was simpler. It was just the first cut. The first world was ash before the Imperium even understood what it faced. The second burned slower, as though it begged for mercy that never came. By the time the third fell, mercy had already lost its meaning. Every transmission that reached the holy Terra carried only fragments, distorted screams, the grinding of gears, and a single haunting phrase repeated by dying vox operators. He is still hungry. Inquisitor Kale had not slept since the encounter. His mind looped the sound of that laughter, the kind that crawled beneath thought and whispered in the rhythm of blood. Across the sector, the Inquisition mobilized. Word spread faster than light, a heretical weapon beyond the warp, beyond understanding. Some called it a demon forged of the Mechanicus' own sins. Others whispered of an emperor's experiment gone wrong. Kale didn't believe any of it. He had seen the creature's eyes, and in them there was no theology, only instinct, only the art of killing for its own joy. On the forge world of Carthos Prime, the Mechanicus gathered in panic. Thousands of robed adepts filled the cathedral of steel, their chants clattering in distorted binary as they debated the impossible readings. Mogos, Shirak, his body more machine than flesh, raised his voice above the static. This anomaly bears no imprint of chaos. It is a pattern of power, pure and uncontrolled. Something old, something human, the hall murmured with dissonant fear. To call anything human was heresy enough, but to admit that something human could cause this level of annihilation was far worse. A lesser adept interrupted, his voice trembling through vox distortion. Magos, if it is human, can it be reasoned with? Shirak's optic lenses adjusted, the glow dimming to a cold crimson. You do not reason with a storm. The lights flickered. The air filled with a strange, rising hum, not mechanical, not warp-born. The adepts turned toward the sound, and dread filled every augmetic heart. The vibration was coming from within the cathedral itself. From the center dais, the sacred cogitator began to spin without command. Its runes flared red, molten, alive. The chant halted. Then came the smell, iron and oil mixed with blood. The cogitator split open like a wound, and a hand reached through, clawing its way out of the machine's core. Flesh merged with wire, metal fused to sinew, and the chainsaw man stepped out of the data stream like a god born of blasphemy. For a moment, the adepts could only stare, trapped between worship and terror. His head tilted, and the saw word, once a low growl that made the walls tremble. Shirak raised his mechadendrites in a defensive blessing, chanting the canticles of protection. But his words faltered as the machine spirit of his body rebelled. Circuits fried, limbs locked. The tech priest screamed as his own augmetics turned against him. the chains sound vibrating through every wire, rewriting their sacred code into something primal and cruel. When the saw came down, it didn't cut, it consumed. Steel, blood, memory, all dissolved into that endless roar. The cathedral's walls buckled outward, molten glass spilling into the streets as thousands fled. But there was no escape. The roar spread like radiation, and everything it touched broke down into the same pulsing hum, a choir of death and machinery dot above the dying city. A single transmission escaped before the Vox collapsed entirely. The machine god has met something he cannot understand, and for the first time in the Mechanicus' long history, Mars received a transmission not of prayer, but of fear. On Mars, the red sands trembled beneath a sky bruised by storm and static. The forges burned in unholy synchrony, their machine spirits restless. The priesthood of the Adeptus Mechanicus gathered within the noosphere, their digital prayers colliding in frantic data streams. Countless minds linked together, trying to isolate the anomaly. Every cogitator echoed the same corrupted waveform, a pulsating rhythm identical to the chainsaw's scream. Archmagos Lyran stood before the grand schema of the Omnissiah's design, his voice a mixture of code and grief. "Something has rewritten the laws of function," he said, his vox grilled trembling. "The barrier between flesh and machine is collapsing. Even our blessed servitors dream." Around him, screens flickered with impossible data, images of Mechanicus constructs twitching like living creatures, of skittery units turning their weapons on themselves, carving spirals into steel floors. One screen showed Amargos whispering to his own augmetic arm before it crushed his skull. Lyran's mind reached into the machine god's hymn, searching for reason, but instead he felt it, a presence within the code, humming just beneath the binary. A laughter that had no source, like a heartbeat echoing through copper veins. He tore the connection from his neural jack, gasping, sparks flying from his implants. "It's inside the song," he whispered. "It's rewriting Mars." Outside, the forge temples erupted. Lava geysers split open under the weight of unseen pressure. The air filled with the scent of rust and blood. Tech thralls screamed as their augmetics melted into their skin. Then came the roar. It didn't come from the forges. It came from the sky. The first orbital defense cannon fired blindly, cutting through the crimson clouds, but there was nothing to hit until the clouds themselves split apart. Through them descended a figure trailing chains and smoke. He fell like a meteor, slamming into the great manufactorum of Olympus Mons. The impact shattered a city's worth of glass and faith in a single breath. When the smoke cleared, the chainsaw man stood amid the wreckage. His skin shimmered between flesh and chrome, his weapon dripping with liquid fire. Every servo in the sector screamed in pain. The noosphere flooded with corrupted visions, memory fragments of slaughter, glimpses of the same man laughing as worlds burned. Skittery legions mobilized, their ranks locking into precision formation. Thousands of red-robed soldiers leveled galvanic rifles at the intruder. The order to fire came through 100 voices, and for a moment, Mars itself roared with defiance. A storm of plasma and laser tore across the landscape, but the figure only moved forward, the saw spinning faster. The blasts struck his body, searing flesh, and yet he smiled wider, the light reflecting off his jagged teeth. Every wound healed before the next bolt struck. Then the roar changed pitch. The sound alone broke the ranks. Heads split, optics burst, and the skittery fell as their minds overloaded. The chainsaw man waded into their lines, his weapon dancing like a living thing. Each motion was artistry, heads, limbs, metal, and bone reduced to vapor and light. When it ended, silence consumed the forge. The Mechanicus network went dark. Only static remained in that static. A faint voice whispered through the vox, the same mechanical tone that once praised the omniscient, but now it spoke a new litany. A phrase burned into every surviving data slate across the Red World. The god of blood and steel has come. The Red World bled for an entire day before the Inquisition arrived. Dropships pierced the thick Martian haze, their hulls marked with the inquisitorial seal, a black eye haloed in fire. The air still carried the smell of ozone and burnt flesh, drifting like incense in a cathedral of ruin. Where once the forges had thundered, now there was only the whisper of wind over molten glass and slag. The arrival of the Inquisitor was not greeted with reverence, but silence, as though Mars itself feared to draw attention. Inquisitor Rael Voss stepped from the ramp, his armor scorched by previous wars, his eyes pale as winter light. He had faced demons that tore through reality like paper, faced traitors who thought themselves gods, but what he saw here was neither. His boots sank into a mixture of dust and oil that pulsed faintly beneath the surface, like the world itself was breathing. He touched the ground, and a faint hum answered back, a rhythm too steady, too alive around him. His retinue moved in practiced formation, psychers scanning the air for warp residue, acolytes gathering fragments of corrupted circuitry, stormtroopers securing the perimeter. Every Auspex, every detector, returned the same result. No warp trace detected. And yet the devastation stretched for kilometers. Entire manufactorums erased, vox lines filled with incoherent static, and the digital hymns of the Mechanicus reduced to a single haunting sound, a chain's rev, rising and falling like a heartbeat. Voss raised his data's, playing the final vox transmission from Archmagos Liran. He's not a demon. The voice crackled through layers of distortion. He's hunger made metal. Not born of the warp, not born of flesh. He consumes the code itself, then static, then silence. The Inquisitor clenched his jaw. His mind turned over the impossible, something outside. The warp's influence that could destroy a forge world. Such a thing should not exist. It broke the core of Imperial doctrine. Faith, technology, and mutation each had their place in the cosmic order. But this was chaos without corruption. Purge protocol, Voss said flatly. His stormtroopers moved with precision, setting melter charges and sanctifying them with quick prayers. His psychers whispered litanies of warding, their eyes bleeding from the psychic strain. But before they could finish, the air vibrated. A low hum became a growl. The world shook. The first charge detonated prematurely, consumed by a surge of energy that burst from beneath the surface. Molten metal erupted like blood from a wound. From within the crater, a figure rose, coated in iron dust and flame. His chainsaws worry in a rhythm that matched the pulse of Mars. The soldiers opened fire. Bolts exploded against his body, tearing chunks of flesh, revealing the chrome beneath, not mechanical, but living metal that pulsed like muscle. Voss raised his Inferno pistol and fired point blank. The blast melted half the figure's torso, but it only made him laugh. That same inhuman laughter that echoed in every data channel. The Inquisitor realized, too late, that the creature wasn't attacking them. It was feeding on their weapons, on the sacred machinery itself, on the thin layer of technology that wrapped humanity like a second skin. Every weapon fired made it stronger. every shot a prayer answered in reverse. When the battle ended, nothing remained of Voss or his retinue but scorched armor and a whisper that rippled across the new sphere. The Chainsaw Man devours the creed of Steel Dot. Mars went dark that night. No signal escaped. No prayer reached Terra, and deep in the void, something stirred. In the silent gulf between stars, the echoes of Mars' death reached out like dying prayers. The void was never quiet. It hummed with the faint vibrations of the Astronomicon, the Emperor's divine signal. But now, somewhere within that sea of light, a new frequency began to pulse. At first, it seemed like static. Then it grew into something alive, a mechanical growl, faint but relentless, threading through the transmission bands of the Adeptus Mechanicus, like a parasite in the bloodstream of the machine god. Forge, worlds across the segmentum, Solar awoke to corrupted hymns. Servitors spasmed mid-task, mechadendrites thrashing as if caught in invisible chains. Vox chanters screamed until their augmetic throats burst, unable to harmonize the distortion in their data feeds. What began as a signal soon became an infection, one that needed no ship, no warp gate, no passage through reality. It simply arrived, spreading through the Imperial noosphere like a fever dream. On the forge world of Ryza, Tech Priest, Dominus Severon stood atop a spire of molten copper, staring at the great furnaces below. He had fought data viruses before, demon codes that screamed with warp-born tongues. This was different. The new corruption had no scent of the imitation. It was physical, tangible, hungry. Every time his adepts tried to quarantine it, it consumed their firewalls, reprogrammed their servitors, and converted them into something new. He dared a direct link, overriding every safety protocol. The moment he connected, he felt it, the rhythm, the heartbeat of the machine that wasn't a machine. It pulsed in patterns almost human, but fractured, erratic, desperate. Beneath it, a laugh, distorted but clear. He pulled away instantly, his mind bleeding from the overload. His last coherent thought before collapsing was a single name he'd seen written in code. Again and again, Denji. By the time Zevran's mind rebooted, Ryza was burning. The forges had gone rogue, producing weapons without command, engines without pilots, and chainsaws without wielders. The ground split open as rivers of molten promethium erupted from below. A massive figure stood within the flames, his outline shimmering with heat, his saws screaming like tortured angels. Each step he took rippled across the world's machinery, turning sacred constructs into extensions of his will, the skittery deployed in waves. Thousands marched beneath banners of the cog mechanicum, chanting the litanies of purity, but their formation faltered as their weapons began to betray them. Bolters jammed mid-fire, power swords sputtered and died, and targeting systems filled with a single symbol, a jagged red spiral. The Chainsaw Man moved through them like a shadow carved from the void to the Mechanicus. The sound of a chainsaw should have been meaningless, an ancient Terran relic long forgotten. Yet somehow every mind that heard it understood. It was a devourer's song. It called to the primal fear buried beneath logic and code, the terror of losing self to machine or beast. The soldiers screamed prayers to the Omnissiah as they died, but the machine spirit did not answer. When the last factory fell, Ryza's manufactorums erupted in synchronized explosions, sending fragments of molten metal into orbit. For a brief moment, those fragments formed a ring around the dying world, a halo of broken industry. At its center stood the Chainsaw Man, motionless, his blades silent, as though the feast had sated him. But in the silence, something else began to stir, a low hum rising from the void between worlds, where dead satellites drifted and forgotten machines slept. He lifted his head slowly, his saws twitching. There was still more metal to feed upon. In the aftermath of Rise's fall, the Imperium tried to deny it. Official reports were sealed, data packets redacted by the Inquisition, and Mechanicus archives purged of all reference to the event. But denial could not stop what had already begun. The infection no longer needed a host world. It had adapted, weaving itself into the circuitry of every transmission, every relay, every server skull drifting through the void. The roar had become a signal. The Chainsaw Man had become a frequency. On the battle barge, Farum et Anum, orbiting the fortress world of Graia, the tech marines of the Iron Hands chapter were the first to sense it. Their augmetic implants twitched with phantom echoes, like ghosts whispering through the cogitator links. Chapter Master Kada stood upon the command dais, listening as the ship's vox hummed in low static. He ordered a diagnostic sweep. The results came back impossible. The Etanum's core machine spirit was mute. Its sacred logic circuits were rewriting themselves. Then the lights dimmed. One by one, the servitors slumped to the floor, their limbs spasming, their flesh melted into steel, their augmetics fusing into grotesque, organic machinery. From the vox grills came laughter, human at first, then monstrous. You hear it too. A voice whispered through every speaker. That hunger, it's beautiful, isn't it? Kador drew his power axe and severed the link, sparks raining down around him. The laughter faded, but the hum persisted, pulsing through the ship's hull like a heartbeat. Shut it down, he commanded, but it was already too late. The starboard cannons fired of their own accord, launching molten plasma into the void. The ship's reactors surged, veins of light crawling across the walls like living veins. Tech Marines tried to reroute power, only to find their own armor responding to the signal. Fingers fused with steel, helmets sealed shut. The machine spirits they once communed with now whispered in Chainsaw Man's voice, begging to feed. Kada fought his way to the command shrine, each step echoing against the trembling deck. Through the forward viewport, he saw it, a shape forming from the plasma clouds outside, massive and terrible, a humanoid silhouette, glowing red, its saws spinning endlessly, cutting through the void as though space itself were flesh. Its presence burned into the retina, an afterimage of pure horror. Every sensor screamed warnings. The ship's noosphere overloaded. The Iron Hands, paragons of fusion between flesh and machine, suddenly felt both sides of themselves revolt. Half their minds tried to pray, the other half tried to obey. And somewhere between those halves, the Chainsaw Man whispered, "You're just like me." Kado's final act was not a battle cry, but a prayer, one so old it predated Mars itself. Omnissiah, forgive your children, for they have made a god of the wrong machine. He plunged his axe into the core, severing the link between spirit and steel. The Ferrum Eternum imploded silently, folding in on itself. No devries, no survivors. Only the faint hum of the chainsaw still echoing across the cum channels. Long after the ship's death, across the Imperium, the Mechanicus panicked. Forge worlds began cutting communication lines, isolating themselves. Planets shut down their machine spirits in desperation. But silence only made it worse. The infection thrived in absence, growing stronger with each system that tried to hide in the void beyond Graia. The glow of plasma still lingered, coalescing into a humanoid shape. The Chainsaw Man stepped out from the dying light, his eyes reflecting the chaos of the stars. He looked down upon the galaxy of steel and whispered a word that carried across every channel: hungry. The galaxy convulsed in quiet terror. Across the Imperium's countless worlds, the same nightmare repeated itself: machine spirits going mad, manufactrums birthing weapons that turned against their own, Vox networks screaming in unison before cutting to silence. What began as rumor was now impossible to deny. Something was devouring the Mechanicus from within, not through heresy, not through chaos, but through hunger, raw, primal, human hunger, bound in steel on Terra. Beneath the shadow of the Golden Throne, the High Lords convened. In the great hall of governance, where decisions of empire were made, the air was heavy with incense and fear. Server skulls hovered silently, recording every word, though even they trembled with faint mechanical spasms. The Fabricator General of Mars, or what was left of him, stood among them, his body half rebuilt after the fall. His voice, transmitted through a dozen voximeters, crackled with unease. "It is not a demon," he said. "It does not draw from the warp. It consumes only the material, code, alloy, energy. Its presence defies categorization. It is infection made manifest. Then purge it," snapped Lord Militant Arcturus. "Send the burn it from existence." The Fabricator General's mechanical eye flickered. "You cannot burn what exists in transmission. Every world that receives a signal from an infected relay becomes part of it. It is not a creature anymore. It is the chamber lights dimmed." Every servo skull froze mid-air. The vox feeds erupted with static, and from the distortion came a sound faint at first, then unmistakable. The chainsaw's growl. Guardsmen opened fire on nothing, bullets tearing through the sacred banners of the Imperium. The High Lords fell into chaos. The Astronomicon itself flickered above, as if even the Emperor's light hesitated for one trembling moment on the other side of the galaxy. The Chainsaw Man stood atop a dead forge world, his reflection cast against an ocean of molten iron. The noise of the saws had become quiet, almost reverent. He gazed into the horizon, where the skeletal remains of a titan slumbered beneath the ash. Slowly, he stepped toward it. The ground shook with each footfall. When he reached the fallen god machine, he placed his blood-slicked hand against its surface. The metal shivered, then screamed. Sparks erupted as cables slithered out from the titan's body, coiling around him like veins reuniting with their heart. Its reactor roared to life, blinding light pouring from its chest. And from within the cockpit, where no pilot remained, something else breathed. The Chainsaw Man walked forward, and the Titan walked with him. It was no longer a war engine of the Imperium. It was a vessel of consumption. Its saws roared in harmony with his own. Together, they turned the once holy forges of Mars children into a graveyard of burning steel. Every Mechanicus prayer that night ended the same way, not with words of the Omniscient, but with silence. The machine god did not answer. The machine spirits no longer obeyed. The priests realized, too late, that their faith had been a door, and someone, or something, had finally walked through it, and somewhere beyond the veil. In the faint glow of the Astronomicon, a flicker ran through the psychic field. A scream, not of horror, but of awakening. For the first time in 10,000 years, something inside the Golden Throne stirred. The void above Terra burned. For the first time in millennia, the Astronomicon faltered, its sacred light dimming like a dying sun. Across the galaxy, astropaths screamed in unison, their minds imploding under waves of psychic feedback. The Imperial Palace trembled as the Golden Throne's reactors surged beyond control, casting the halls of the Emperor's domain in shifting gold and crimson. The custodians stood in silent ranks, unsure whether to pray or draw their guardian blades. Something had entered the throne's shadow, something that did not belong in the depths below, where only the Adeptus Custodes and the silent sisters of the golden light dared tread. An alarm began to wail, one that had not been heard since the heresy. Its sound was not a klaxon, not a mechanical tone, but a roar, a sound like metal tearing through reality. Deep within the vaults of the Imperial dungeon, the wards flickered. Chainsaw Man was already there. He had come not through the warp, nor through the web of stars. He had arrived as signal, infection, and flame. The air around him shimmered as the throne's energy tried to reject his presence. But even the Emperor's machine could not erase hunger. His chainsaw hands dripped molten gold, the blood of 1,000 slain machine spirits running like rivers around his feet. Custodians advanced, golden armor gleaming, halberds raised. They were humanity's finest living demigods, forged from the Emperor's own design. The first one struck, his weapon a beam of light that could sever atoms, and yet Chainsaw Man caught it between his spinning blades. Sparks exploded like miniature suns. The custodian pushed harder, their strength unmatched, but the creature smiled through the sparks. "You protect a god who never eats," he said, voice low, guttural, almost human. "What kind of god is that?" The custodian's answer was silent devotion. His halberd flared again, burning through the air, but the fight was already over. Chainsaw Man stepped forward, forcing the weapon down and slicing through the warrior in a spray of molten oromite. The scent of oil and blood mingled, filling the sacred corridor. One by one, the rest charged, and one by one, they fell. But as the last of them crumbled, Chainsaw Man paused. He turned toward the great sealed gate that led to the throne itself, a gate inscribed with 1,000,000,000 prayers, a door that had not opened in 10,000 years. The hum behind it was different from anything else in the galaxy. Not mechanical, not psychic, alive. He placed his hand upon the surface. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then the gold beneath his fingers began to melt, not from heat, but from resonance, the throne answering his touch. He leaned closer, his voice a whisper. "You've been awake this whole time, haven't you?" A pulse answered faint, but there, the Emperor, entombed within his throne, stirred. For a moment, light poured through the cracks of the gate, raw burning divinity that turned the air to fire. Chainsaw Man laughed, the sound wild, defiant, free. "I wondered," he said, "what would happen if a god bled." The gate cracked. Every soul on Terra screamed as the light behind the throne flickered once more, not out, but open, and in that blinding glow, for the first time since the age of heresy, the Emperor's eyes moved. The moment the Emperor's eyes opened, the universe held its breath. Every psyker across the Imperium convulsed in unison, collapsing into seizures, their minds flooded by visions of a blinding figure seated upon an eternal machine of suffering. For 10,000 years, his body had been little more than divine machinery, flesh woven with gold, bone fused to sacred steel. Yet now, something human flickered within that dying frame. The golden throne screamed. Thousands of cables writhed like serpents, sparks cascading through the chamber like falling stars. Custodian reinforcements stormed the corridor, their voices rising in battle hymns older than history. The air turned molten, gravity fractured, and time itself seemed to stagger under the strain. Chainsaw Man stood before the gate, his saws spinning slower now, coated in gold and the black ichor of machine spirit. His breathing was uneven, heavy, not from exhaustion, but exhilaration. The Emperor's light poured over him, not burning, not blinding, but recognizing it was impossible, and yet undeniable. In that roaring silence, the chainsaw's growl harmonized with the throne's heartbeat. The two rhythms merged hunger and divinity. Predator and God, one endless vibration that rippled through the galaxy like a wound reopening. A voice filled the chamber, deep and ancient, more thought than sound. "You are not of my design." Chainsaw Man smiled, teeth glinting beneath the glow. "No," he said, "but I'm what your design becomes when it gets hungry enough." Light exploded from the throne. Every custodian, every sister of silence within reach, was vaporized in an instant. The chainsaws flared brighter, meeting that divine blaze head-on. Energy met energy, one drawn from the faith of uncounted souls, the other from the primal instinct to devour everything that exists. The shockwave tore through the palace, leveling spires that had stood since the Great Crusade. Above Terra, the fleets guarding the system were blinded by the eruption. The Astronomicon pulsed erratically, sending chaotic bursts of light across the stars. On distant worlds, astropaths wept as they received fragments of the same impossible vision. A man made of blades, standing before the Emperor of mankind. Not kneeling, not begging, but challenging. Deep within the light, Chainsaw Man staggered forward, his blades shattering against invisible force. His flesh melted and reformed, muscles twitching between human and machine. "You feed on faith," he said through clenched teeth. "I feed on everything else." The Emperor's response was a wave of pure will. Images filled Chainsaw Man's mind, humanity's wars, its endless cycles of blood and progress, the rise and fall of empires. And then came the question, why do you destroy what you do not hate? He hesitated. For the first time, his breath caught. "Because it's there," he whispered. "Because it's real." The light dimmed. For a heartbeat, all was still. The chainsaws stopped. The throne's energy stabilized. Custodians who yet lived watched in disbelief as Chainsaw Man dropped to one knee, steam rising from his wounds. The Emperor's presence faded, retreating once more into silence. But before the light vanished completely, one final drop of golden liquid fell from the throne's edge. It struck the ground between them, sizzling upon impact. Gold turned red. The Emperor of mankind had bled, and in that single drop, something changed. The drop of golden blood struck the floor like the toll of a final bell. It hissed and boiled, its light consuming shadow, its scent unlike any mortal essence. Every surviving custodian froze, staring at the impossible sight, their god bleeding. In the silence that followed, Terra itself seemed to quiver. The wind over the spires of the palace howled through broken glass, carrying whispers of awe and fear. Chainsaw Man knelt before the glowing liquid, his saws trembling, not from weakness, but from something stranger recognition. The golden drop pulsed, mirroring the rhythm of his own heartbeat. He reached out, and the blood reached back. When his fingers touched it, the world ignited. Visions flooded his mind, a storm of memory and madness. He saw ancient Terra before the unification, oceans of war and smoke. He saw the Emperor walking among humanity, faceless yet familiar, gathering his sons like fragments of a shattered soul. He saw betrayal, fire, and the slow agony of immortality. But beneath it all, he saw something else: hunger. The same hunger that burned within himself. The Emperor had never been a god. He had been a man who refused to die, and like all things that defy death, he had learned to feed, not on flesh, not on blood, but on faith. Billions of prayers, millions of sacrifices, a constant offering of belief that kept his corpse alive and his light burning. Chainsaw Man's laughter broke the silence, a jagged human sound that echoed across the sacred chamber. "So," he said, rising slowly, "you're just like me, after all." The throne pulsed, golden light rising once more, as if the Emperor's will bristled at the comparison. The walls trembled. The chainsaws flared to life again, answering in kind. Two forms of hunger collided, one divine, one mortal, neither yielding. The resulting shockwave rippled across reality itself, distorting time and space. Ships in orbit reported impossible readings. Some swore they saw Terra split in two. Others claimed to hear laughter in the void. At the heart of it all, Chainsaw Man stood his ground. The throne's power tore through him, burning his flesh to ash, regrowing it again, over and over. He screamed not in pain, but exhilaration. "I'm not here to end you," he shouted into the blinding light. "I'm here to remind you what it feels like to be alive." The light flared one last time and then collapsed inward. The entire chamber went dark. When the illumination returned, the throne was silent. The Emperor's light had dimmed, but not gone. The machinery still pulsed, faint and slow, like a slumbering heart. Chainsaw Man was gone. Only a trail of gold and red marked where he had stood. Outside, across the stars, the Astronomicon flickered and then steadied. The galaxy's silence broke. Astropaths reported visions of fire, steel, and laughter. Some said they saw a figure drifting through the void, chainsaws burning like suns, moving toward the edge of existence. Others whispered that the Emperor's aura felt lighter, as if a weight had been cut away, and deep beneath the throne, where no mortal voice could reach, a single whisper echoed through the psychic abyss. "Not divine, not mechanical, human, thank you." The Chainsaw Man smiled in the dark between worlds, his saws silent now, his hunger momentarily sated. Somewhere behind him, the Imperium rebuilt, blind to the truth that their god had bled and remembered what it meant to be mortal. The roar faded into eternity. The feast was over.